All right, Johnny boy, look who's back on the program here, Mr. Mark Greaney. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Mike.
Ooh.
Thanks for having me.
A little early to be drinking, so I'm going to be
I
drinking
know. I
this.
just have a
Coffee and
seltzer.
water.
I know, I know. Well, we just had you on for Sierra 6, but lo and behold, there was yet another Mark Greaney product that came out or is coming out soon. And this one, kind of the genesis of it was a little bit different. So can you explain maybe kind of how this was a little bit different of a beast than a standard novel release, and maybe tell us a little bit more about the storyline here on Armored?
Yeah. So this book that's finally coming out has been over 10 years in the making in one form or another. It was 2011 when I first got this idea to write a story about civilian military contractors kind of lost and on the run in the mountains of Mexico. And I started doing some research and started doing some writing. Initially, it was going to be a screenplay. I wanted to write a screenplay. And it just was taking me forever. It was basically taking me forever because I didn't have an editor going, I need this by, the end of the week or whatever.
Yeah.
So nobody was lighting a fire under my butt. So I just kind of like picked at it when I could. And then Audible came to me after I'd probably already been working on it for 4 years or something in my little downtime. And they asked about doing an audio play, an original audio drama where you have actors and sound effects and music. And I just basically dusted off this half of a screenplay that I'd written. And I said, if you like this story, I could whip something up. And I couldn't. They said yes. And it turns out you can't whip that up. I had to really study the genre and figure out how to do everything via sound cues and dialogue. And it took a long time, but it came out last December as an audio play.
Right.
And Audible did a great job with it and did really well. But when Tom Colgan, my editor, read the audio play well before it came out, he's like, you own the intellectual property on this. We want you to make some books out of the series. And I was excited by that because this was a story that I wanted to flesh out even more. I mean, the audio play is like 4.5 hours long, or 5.5 hours long, and or 6 hours long. I can't remember now. It's pretty long. Book. It's pretty long. Yeah, people say it's a short book, and I'm like, yeah, but it's the longest play you've ever seen in your life. If you sat down on Broadway around 4 p.m. and got out around 10 p.m., you're not going to say that was short, because it's a different animal than a book. And but I wanted to really expand on this story and go deeper into the characters and actually more detailed and kind of create some action sequences that are a little bit more robust than what you're able to kind of like do through the audio format. The audio play opens up a lot of doors for a writer that he doesn't have otherwise, but it kind of shuts some windows in the process. So I really wanted to, do what I normally do and write a big book. So a 50,000 word audio play became a 150,000 word novel.
Right. Yeah. I picked it up and I was like, oh, there's a lot of pages here that probably weren't in the audio version. From what I can tell, Armored kind of ushers in this new area within the audiobook industry, because the level of production and the investment that likely went into all this, I really hadn't seen any other place. It might have existed, but I hadn't really seen it, and certainly wasn't like a industry-wide standard. You didn't have one guy just in a booth reading this thing. So do you think Armored kind of opens up maybe a Pandora's box where the industry is going to have to start producing this level of material based on the success that we've seen so far?
Well, I hope they do it more. I don't want it to replace anything, but when Audible came to me initially, they were kind of like, this is a new format. We're not sure how this is going to be received, but we've done a couple other like this. So I listened to them, and they do exist. If you go on Audible and you look for like sort of original audio drama, there's not a ton of them. There's a like a novelization of the Aliens franchise. And that was one that I listened to, and I was just like, within 5 minutes, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do this so bad. Not knowing how hard it was to write, but but like being like, how cool will that be that like you say this thing blows up, and then you actually hear it blow up, and the big sound effects and everything.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely something Audible wants to do more of. It all depends on how it's received, and mine was received really well. So I don't know if it's going to revolutionize things, but hopefully it moves it along to the next step. I'd be happy to do another one again at some point.
In your spare time there.
Yeah, in my spare time.
Well, Mark, one of the things I love about the Gray Man books is Court Gentry's humanity, his flaws, his how often he makes decisions that work against his own best interest, which mirrors my life in many ways. But still, he's an operative of unparalleled skill and has the confidence to match. Now, with Josh Duffy, you have a man who's kind of a different animal because of how his last mission ended, and maybe even before that, he was a man with no doubts and no illusions that he was Superman. Right. How did approaching the action sequences differ from writing a Gray Man book? Did you have to consciously remind yourself to temper Duffy's ability and remember he's not Court Gentry?
Oh, I wonder if I did that. I might have done that early on in the thing. I have done a lot of training with civilian military contractors and firearm schools here and there. And so I would say the action sequences more accurately reflected like the stuff that I was trained in or told to worry about, or kind of the research that I've done about military contracting or whatever. Everything obviously is amped up to 11 in a book. So the action sequences are very, dramatic and big, but just like you said, Josh Duffy is he's a bodyguard. He's a, executive protection guy, like a, mobile protection guy. Mm-hmm. And, he's good with the firearm and he's good working within a team. And, but he's not the Gray Man. He's not Jason Bourne. He's not a superhero. And so you see him limited by his abilities at times in this story. It's just another vulnerability that, I like to put into all my characters. But with Josh, you also get this sense that he wants to do what is right, regardless of his own best interests. But at the same time, he's definitely trying to, he's trying to raise a family and pay his mortgage and that sort of stuff. So it's very different from the Gray Man in that regard.
Yeah. Did it open up a lot of sort of possibilities that maybe you wouldn't find in a Gray Man novel, given the fact that he was more vulnerable?
Yeah. And I wanted the family dynamic in there. The relationship with his wife, Nicole, is super important in the book, not just, she's not just, supporting him at home, over the phone. She's very hands-on, very ballsy, just badass woman. And it's sort of juxtaposed with Duffy, who is a little more mild-mannered. He's never been a leader. He's never been a team leader, whereas his wife was an Army officer. And I just wanted to show that interesting dynamic. So that's all stuff you can't necessarily do in a Gray Man novel, because it doesn't have a wife and little kids at home. And, I don't spend a lot of time in the Gray Man novels talking about him paying his utility bill or something like that. I think people would be turned off pretty although that day may come. I write enough of these.
Yeah.
that might be
years old. Yeah.
That might be a plot at some point.
Well, since you started Armored so long ago, really, how much would you say had to change or did change from the beginning and when you first started to what we're seeing in the finished product? I mean, because we all know you go through editing process and, there's maybe about a 20% change, but was it even more dramatic given the decade time span that you were under in work on this?
Yeah. I mean, really what would happen is it would happen in fits and starts. And with the screenplay, I got really jammed up and apart about 2/3 of the way through the story, and I just didn't know where to go with it, and nothing seemed to be working. And it was so incredibly frustrating. And I was there for a really, really long time. And that's where I was when it turned into an audio play. That's as far as I've gotten. And it was also way too long to be a screenplay. I mean, Sean, a screenplay. If you're on page 185 of your screenplay and you think you've told about half the story, you probably have
miniseries.
Yeah, that's where I was. Yeah, miniseries. Yeah, this happened so long ago that wasn't even people weren't even doing that. But I got jammed up in this place, and ultimately it was our mutual friend Josh Hood, who I had him read it. And he was literally just said, all you have to do is move that setting from here to here, which is another setting in the story, that happens down, and then you have that action there, and then all your problems will sort of go away. And I was like, damn it, he's right. And so that got me through. But I mean, this was a book that, I never have a whole book figured out when I started, but this was something I had, my characters in my head, and I had a couple of action sequences, and I kind of had a double cross in mind, and I kind of went from there. And, sometimes writing by the seat of your pants is the best way to do it. And sometimes it doesn't really work. And this overall took a lot longer because I didn't have it well mapped out. So I definitely changed things in the later stages.
Mm.
So it sounds like it wasn't a matter of adding muscle and fat to the skeleton. It was almost like a start from scratch retelling, but you had certain things, but it was more of a start from scratch.
Yeah, just the format of when I did the audio play, just the format was so different that you had to totally start from scratch. The story's there, but everything has to come from dialogue or some sort of a sound cue. I didn't want there to be a narrator saying, now Bob is going into a dark room. It's just like I wanted to elevate it from that. And actually, eventually I did sort of give up and try and put a narrator in. And my editor at Audible, Steve Feldberg, was like, yeah, that doesn't work. And I was like, all right, okay, he's right. He's keeping me honest, because I sort of knew in my head that was the easy way out. So yeah, it was a tough thing. The book, the book was tough to write as well. I knew the story so intimately, but the way that I wanted to expand it and flesh it out and yet keep the pace, relentless pace, that was work all on its own. I did that the whole second half of last year. I worked on the novel.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Well, you kind of segued in with the dialogue. One of the standout qualities of Armored is the quality of the dialogue. This is nothing new for you, but it is a fuller cast of characters in a lot of the scenes, so it stands out more when there's 10 people talking instead of 3. Yeah. And you mentioned you've spent some time with private contractors to familiarize yourself with the way they interact, with the way they speak, how they operate. But my question, I guess, is this is a writer geek question. Do you ever record these conversations so you can get the vernacular and the cadence, or does it just stick in your head when you hear it?
It just sticks in my head. I haven't really ever recorded, like being in the team rooms or bunkhouses or even in the training things. I think there's some video. I know I have some video of some of the classes I've taken, and you can hear people talking and shouting and doing radio broadcast or whatever. But honestly, that just kind of gets pretty ingrained in your head when you do enough of that stuff, because it was live fire training, so you're taking everything incredibly seriously. There's some pictures of me that I look at, and they're so embarrassing, because it's like, I may look like I'm trying to look like a badass, but I know that I am scared that I'm about to get shot in the ass or whatever. And it's just that pucker factor of doing these things. But doing it enough, you kind of get the vernacular down pretty good. I have friends, from that industry, and friends obviously in the training cadre of the school where I went, and I've certainly reached out to them or listened to how they talk as well.
Mexican cartels play a significant role in Armored, and like all your books, the detail seems kind of almost beyond just your imagination. So when you talked about you doing your research, were you deep into the research of how these cartels operate and how they're functioning, or did you lean on people who are maybe, tied into that part of the world to maybe flesh out a lot of the interactions that you had throughout the book?
It's funny you asked that. In my entire career as a writer, every time I've reached out to somebody, no matter what field they're in, every single time, it could be intelligence, or it could be, aircraft, or it could be military or whatever. Yeah. I've gotten some level of response or some level of engagement, or answers to some of my questions. Yeah. Definitely not all, 100% of the time. And literally the only time in my entire career that somebody just said no interest in talking to you whatsoever was someone on the US side in the drug war, very involved in what's going on down there in Mexico. And he was literally like, I'm not touching you with a 10-foot pole, dude. I mean, he was nice about it. He actually wasn't that nice about it, but he didn't need to be. You know, all he needed to do was convey that. And I'm like, I get it, I respect it. But it was literally the only time. And I've spoken with some people, you know, who are happy to talk about non-classified things in all fields.
Sure.
But I did do a lot of research on the cartels, and I spent some time down there, not exactly where it takes place in the book, because that would be pretty foolhardy to go there.
Yeah.
But I probably got close enough without getting too close. But honestly, the cartels, like the main cartel in this story, is fictionalized.
Sure.
Completely fictionalized, but it's sort of based on different cartels. Like there's a one called La Familia Michoacan, which is not defunct, but much weaker than they were. But they sort of had aspects of that. Definitely Sinaloa. Definitely, it's a very much an El Chapo figure that they're going to, you know, going to look for. So, you know, I did the work and I did the research to understand enough about what's really happening down there to back away from that and then use my imagination after that.
You didn't go climb around some tunnels or anything like that just to see what it was like?
I didn't go do the full Sicario thing, but, you know, I will say that there's a female anthropologist in the story named Dr. Gabriela Flores.
Yeah.
And she was sort of put in there because I wanted there to be some context in this story. And it wasn't just going to be a bunch of, you know, American tough dudes going down and kicking ass in Mexico. You know, it's a civil war. And I felt that very much when I was down there. You know, you're right in the middle of a civil war, and it's really perilous for the the people down there. And so I wanted there to be this, you know, kind of intelligent voice throughout this whole story, where these guys are just trying to get a paycheck at first and trying to survive throughout.
Yeah.
But you have Dr. Flores there basically talking about what's going on, you know, putting it into some context. And that was kind of important to me. I didn't want this just to be, you know, a shoot 'em up and using Mexico as like a place to lay waste to. I really like Mexico, and I wanted, you know, to represent the really tough problems they have there accurately.
Did you see any shift in the past decade of what you started to research from the cartels versus where it is today in terms of how they operate and kind of the landscape?
Yeah, honestly, once I had my idea of who the different cartels were and their relationship with one another, I quit researching it, you know, because it's like I had it good enough. And so, you know, things change so much, and just I will just see something on the news and be like, oh wow, the Zetas aren't, you know, around Nuevo Laredo anymore. That's wild. Used to be. And
that stuck out to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. The new generation, what do you call it? The Juarez.
Right.
I forget what it's called. Yeah. You know, they didn't even exist when I started writing this story. And, you know, El Chapo was on the loose when I started writing this story. But once I had this story, I wasn't going to let, you know, the current events dictate how I want to change the story. Because I just narratively, this was the right story to tell.
Yeah.
So there's aspects that are very accurate, and there's aspects that were very accurate 7 years ago. And then there's stuff that's just sort of made up out of whole cloth just because I'm trying to write an entertaining story.
I figured with all your Hollywood connections now, you would have just talked to Sean Penn, since he spent some time with El Chapo.
Yeah, I've never spoken to Sean Penn. Yeah, El Chapo. I would have loved to interview him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So let's talk. You mentioned Nikki, and Nikki's a great character.
Thanks.
The dynamic between that couple. I mean, obviously I have no similarities to Duffy's life, but just some of that was so authentic in the way they interacted. And when you have sort of a supportive spouse who loves you, but also understands that, again, you might make decisions that aren't always in your own best interest.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious about, did a lot of that come from did you mine your relationship with Allison? Because it seems interesting that this would come out at this time in your life as well.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I'm sure there's some interactions in there that would have, you know, come from us. But I mean, initially I got the idea from her because, you know, writing with Tom Clancy and other stuff I've done, I've been on a lot of military bases, and I've met a lot of women in uniform. And, you know, you meet this 22-year-old lieutenant and you think, wow, this, you know, when I was 22 years old, what was I doing? You know, I was waiting tables and whatever. Meanwhile, she's flying helicopters or whatever, something in the Navy or whatever. And you think, God, there's just some amazing people out there in this world. And I hadn't written about females like that. Yeah, I have female spies in my Gray Man series, but Nicole Nikki Duffy is Josh's wife, but she's a former Apache helicopter pilot. And she's very much an alpha female. And I wanted to represent alpha females in a positive light because I don't think that happens a lot. And I just wanted to show she was this take charge badass. And she really loves her husband as well. And sometimes she thinks she knows better than him. And oftentimes she's right about that. And yeah, definitely. And so I don't know. I wanted the dynamic to be something that was, you know, that I sold this, or this has been optioned to Sony Pictures. And I was talking to one of the producers when they were considering optioning it. And he's like, I just really like Nicole because you think you know what you're getting with her, and it's totally spun on its head real early in the story. She is a character. She is not just she's not just wringing her hands at home with the kids. She's very much a badass and a big part of the story. So that was fun for me to put in there.
One of the things I liked about that relationship is, like, there are times when she does know better than him, and she could easily say, "No, you moron, do it my way," but she picks her moments, you know, where she supports him and where and again, that resonated with me completely.
It sounds like our marriages.
Yeah. Brilliant. We're all picking our battles, right?
Yeah. Sean, my prediction is fans of this genre are going to want some more of Duff. And Mark, it took you a while to put this out there. Obviously, you weren't on a timeline, but you know, between, you know, we see, you know, what a fulfilling life you have with your family now, and the Gray Man and the Gray Man series, the movie. Are you going to find yourself trying to figure out if you can carve out time to add this to your workload, or, you know, where is it that you have to politely decline from all the extra work that people want to throw your way, to where you can find the balance in your life that it seems like you've really got a handle on right now?
Yeah, it will be some point in the future where I will not be doing 2 books a year. I'm doing a second Armored. Right now I'm writing the 12th Gray Man book. The second I'm done with that, I'm going to write the next Armored. Second I'm done with that, I'm going to write the 13th Gray Man book. And the second I'm done with that, I'm going to write the second in the Red Metal series. So, and the second I'm done with that, I'll do the 14th Gray Man because I'm contracted for that one. So what is that, 5 books? 5 books back to back to back. And so things take longer for me to write than they used to. I mean, some of those Clancy books, I did my part in them in 90 days, you know, because that's all I had. But back then, when I hadn't already written 22 books, you know, you had more sort of fresh ideas without having to slowly put things together and build and then write something and go, wait, that's too similar to something else. It doesn't work. So it takes me a lot longer to write the same amount of words as it used to. It's just part of getting older and having so much out there already that you don't want to replicate. Yeah. And then also just, you know, as my career has gone, you know, in the right direction, there's just a lot more media and publicity and other obligations and things like that. So I will be writing 5 books in a row over the next 2.5 years, and you know, promoting 5 books and all that. So there's really not much in the way of downtime. I try and carve out what I can when I can. Yeah. But after that, I think I'll definitely go to one a year. I think I've done my time in the trenches, and you know, we'll go to 1 a year. You know, I hope to keep writing Gray Man books, and I hope the Armored series is successful. I mean, there's definitely going to be a second one. and I hope the film version of Armored gets shot, obviously.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and there would be more more interest in that down the road. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I've got to find some time in there to do something else.
Kids aren't getting any younger, it's like.
No, they're not. I'm on back-to-back trips with the kids. We just got back from Hawaii, and this weekend we go to Florida. It's just the way the summer everything fell together in the summer. The rest of the summer is just going to be bonkers crazy. But I have to finish the 12th Gray Man book in July, which is also when this book comes out, which is also when the tie-in version of the Gray Man comes out, which is also when the movie the Gray Man comes out. And so there's a whole bunch of other obligations all falling in that point when I have to crank out the last 30,000 words or so.
We'd love some Mark Greaney issues on our end, wouldn't we?
No, I don't want to make it sound like I'm whining about it.
No,
you're not.
Really not. But
it just tires me out to listen to.
I just got exhausted thinking about it.
The good news, and Allison and I talk about this. The good news is, like, we've known for 2 years that the summer of 2022 is going to be bonkers with the movie coming out, at least.
Yeah.
And I've known for a good year that Armored would come out then. So it's we've prepared ourselves to, I'm not getting much in the way of sleep, and probably won't until hopefully August or so. But that's okay. That's okay.
Until your 56th birthday or whatever.
Yeah. My 55th will be in a couple of weeks. So yeah,
well, it's all downhill 57, I can tell you. So.
Well, let's pivot to the Gray Man film, because all told, it's been like 14 years in the making. I think it was optioned 2009. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Okay. 2009.
So with several stops and starts and several different parties involved, have you seen the end cut yet?
I can't say. I will say that I've seen parts of it, and I've read the shooting script. Okay. And really, really loved it. I'm so happy with it, and so impressed, and really kind of emotionally taken by the way the actors represent some stuff that was important to me when I wrote it. But I don't remember ever discussing it with the Russo brothers when we talked.
Wow.
Yeah, basically the relationship between the hero, the Gray Man, and this young girl who is imperiled, he's trying to protect. I thought it was just done so incredibly perfectly, and not over the top, not cheesy or schmaltzy, but had these incredible emotional underpinnings. And after I saw these parts of the film, I just walked away from it going like, wow, that like affected me emotionally, because I remember writing the story and I remember trying to build that. Wow. And then I just kind of never thought about it again. It's just that was in the story. I haven't read The Gray Man in 14 years, and I'm good. I don't need to. But it was just really wonderful to see. I knew from the beginning, meeting the Russos, that I was in good hands with them, but I didn't know how good a hands I was in with the actors and their performances. But it was very impactful.
Wow. I was gonna say, we've been talking to you for a few years, and it's like it's been sort of that thing off in the future that you knew was coming.
Yeah.
And then now that it's here, I was wondering how much different it was, because you were pretty even keeled and pretty like, I hope it's a good commercial for the book and everything. But I was wondering if the emotion was up now that it's actually happening and you're actually going to see this baby.
Yeah, it is, and I really didn't even expect that. As a writer, once I'd read the script, I was walking around saying, "Well, I've seen the movie because I'm a writer and I've read the script." And it's like I can picture everything the way that it was written, and it's fantastic. And so, I've had this sense of total ease and calm really since Joe Russo showed me that his first version of the script, which was probably 2016 or something like that. And then, a year and a half ago or so, when they sent me the shooting script, I was just like, I couldn't be happier with it. But to actually see the film is really, really blows me away.
Wow. Well, somebody taking care of your baby, really. I mean, in the way that you would like it to be seen done.
Yeah.
I mean, was that satisfaction even more than you imagined it would have been?
It was way more than I imagined. And it was just funny because I remember sitting there with Joe and Anthony way back when. And actually, the first time I talked to them, I was in talks with several different groups about, doing the film.
Yeah.
And when I got on a call with Joe and Anthony Russo, who I barely knew, I hadn't seen Winter Soldier or anything like that. I just immediately, just the way, probably 2 minutes into a 20-minute or whatever, 30-minute conference call, I was going like, yeah, these are the guys. And not that there was anything wrong with the other producers. There's definitely some really big names that were interested. But it was just kind of like, they told me what they liked about the story and their take on who the character was. And we talked about action films and we talked about protagonists. And you just felt like, I tell people, especially people who are going to be a little bit upset that some of the story is different or whatever, I'm like, it doesn't bother me at all, because honestly, it's really cool that I am part of this collaboration where I wrote the first thing, and then the screenwriters did their thing, and then the cinematographer does their thing. Obviously, the actors, they do their thing, and they're all artists, and they're all doing the best they can. If the movie was terrible, I guess I wouldn't be saying any of that stuff. but I'm really happy with how it turned out, and so I'm really happy that I'm a small part of it, or a medium-sized part of it, whatever I am.
Yeah.
Creator, a little bit more than that, but
yeah.
I got another writer geek question. So when I started coaching football, even though I'd played football for my entire life, I started to learn a ton more about football and why you do certain things through coaching. And I was wondering, I know you've been doing a lot of workshops and you've been doing a lot of instructing, like at Thriller Fest and things of that nature. Have you gained any like insights because somebody asks you a question, you start explaining it, you're like, oh, damn, that's why I do that? Or, I mean, has that been an educational process for you at all?
Absolutely. Now, I've only done a couple of workshops, but after the first one, which I was dreading just because it was out of my wheelhouse. I liked it. I really liked it, and I've got something out of it. So I did it again just a couple weeks ago up in New York, and I get a ton out of it. It's really interesting to meet the people. I'm fascinated. I remember just when I was doing this Craft Fest workshop a couple of weeks ago, kind of stopping everybody like right in the middle of the day and say, do you guys, there's 10 of us in the room or whatever. I said, is everybody else picking up on the fact that everybody's story is so completely different, told so differently from each other's, and they're all thrillers, but they're all, they all open differently. It's just really cool to see that, we're not all like, cranking out a printing press and trying to do the same thing. It's like everybody's brain does something different. I think that's really cool. So much of what I do when I do these workshops is I spend the first 30 minutes apologizing to them, and I really think this is my own misplaced anxiety. I'm throwing it on other people that are probably fine, but I've said this at both workshops, and I literally probably spend the first half hour saying, listen, if I was in your shoes and this author says, I'm going to show your 10 pages, your 3,000 words to the class, and I have I've line edited every single thing that I don't like or that I would change or, comment on. If I was in your shoes, I'd be freaking out right now. And I would want to just not be here. But I promise you, like having made all these mistakes myself and being told by editors and copy editors, it's the best way for you to learn and to kind of get things ingrained in your head. So we go through each person's 3,000 words line by line. I lost my voice because I was reading just about everything. And I would say like, oh, I think you've got an echo here. And, I feel like you covered this here, or this isn't necessarily where I'd start the story, but it's all good exposition that I want in the story. So, we have to find a way to weave it in. So by spending 8 hours with people and saying that to them the entire time, hopefully a lot of that sticks. And I also start by saying, this is one guy's opinion, and I've learned everything I've learned by doing it wrong and having somebody say, yeah, that's wrong, or you need to do that different. So I'm doing nothing to them that isn't done to me all the time in the world. So I'm not on any sort of a high horse or whatever, but it does help me a lot. I'm going along with your answer here, but talking to people in Hollywood, and I'm sure you know this, Sean, their ability to discuss story is really, really good, because there's so much, it's such a group. There's there's screenwriters, there's producers, there's talent or whatever. And with an author, you're just sitting there, and I talk to my editor, and then I go away for 6 months and type something, and then I hand it in.
Yeah.
And so, but when I talk to I have a good friend who's a screenwriter, Adam Kozad, and the Russo brothers, and we've had conversations, just the way that they're able to talk about story, and they use all these terms. As soon as they use them, I know exactly what they're talking about, but I can't talk like that. I don't know those terms, but I know what they're saying,
right?
Because I do all this. So when you teach these classes, I mean, I apologize a lot. I'm like, listen, just so you know, I was not good in 7th grade English, and it hurts me every single day, and it's going to hurt you guys too, because when I tell you that you're shifting tenses here a little bit, I can't tell you what the tenses are, or I can't tell you what
right.
This is. You just sort of know that it's right and wrong.
Man, that's awesome. Now, do you think that your writing will change based on your interactions with script writing in Hollywood and all that sort of stuff? Do you see a time when you might actually be writing a little more in that direction, subconsciously even?
I mean, I think it's already happened. Armored, my objective when I was writing Armored was to sell it to Hollywood as well.
Yeah.
Not that I thought it was going to get made. I mean, when I was writing this, there was no chance in hell for The Gray Man getting made until they basically greenlit it and started shooting. I just didn't believe for a second it would ever happen. Yeah. I pretended like I did, because it's a great promotional thing, it was funny. There's a local TV station where I do, they've interviewed me like at least once a year since my first book came out. And I was being interviewed by them recently, and they were going like, wow, yeah, it's finally happening in the movie. And I said, I did the math, y'all. I've been on your show 16 times talking about this movie, and I never really believed this. Like, this is the first time we're talking about it, that it's real. Like, the rest of the time, it's always just sort of in this theoretical thing. And then Mary Beth, one of the anchors, was like, yeah, we didn't really believe it either, but we're happy that it's happening. But with Armored, as I was writing it, I was trying to write it very much for screen. And there's even one scene in the story that is pretty over the top. I don't want to give anything away.
No, don't.
But I remember as I was writing it, I was going, I wouldn't even do this in a Gray Man book. But you know what? I bet Hollywood will eat this shit up. And and I wouldn't say they ate it up, but they did option it. So I was definitely writing with the aim of this somebody wanting to make a screenplay out of it.
Mm. Well, you did that, my friend. This is a lot of fun, and man, you did. And Sean brought it up earlier. You had a lot of new characters. It was fun to, because we all know the Gray Man, and we know his, the supporting cast fairly well. But reading a whole new cast of characters from you, doing something a little different than you normally do, was a lot of fun, because you brought all the usual stuff that we expect from you, but then with a whole new cast of characters, it really holds your attention really strongly, because you're like, oh, that's new, oh, that's new, oh, that's new. So I really loved it. And the cartel stuff was, I was like, I was just picturing that's the way it is. So that was a lot of fun to read too.
Yeah. So. Thanks a lot. Yeah, these were fun characters to write. Like you said, there's a lot of people talking at one time throughout a lot of the story, because there's a half a dozen guys and a female in this gun truck through a big portion of the story. And it's tough, as you guys know, to keep the reader understanding who's talking and
Yeah.
what the emotions and dynamics are.
Right.
But when you go back and read it after putting a little space between writing it and reading it, it's nice to see very distinct personalities in the different characters and manners of speech and all that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that really impressed me, because with that, I know a little bit about it. When you have that many characters, to really be able to close your eyes and hear a different voice with this character.
Yeah.
And that's tough, but man, with this big cast, you managed it, and this is really a lot of fun, man. Congratulations on that.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you. Appreciate
All right.
it.
Well, we know Armored 2 is going to be coming out. I mean, we all know the Gray Man's going to continue. Movies coming out. Good God, dude. Save some for the rest of us.
Yeah, no, this is my little month in the spotlight, and then I just plan on fading back into my dungeon.
Is it July 5th? Am I right on that, or no? What's the date on this?
This comes out July 5th. Yeah.
July 5th. All right.
All right, boys and girls, go out and get armored. It's awesome. Thanks again, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Always enjoy it.
All right. Shiny boy, we had Mark Greaney and Armored. We weren't talking about Gray Man. Holy cow. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. This is not a short book. This is a Mark Greaney style tome that has a lot of new characters that were a lot of fun to read. And then you catch yourself saying, but it's not court gentry, because it's not court gentry. It's a whole different cast of crew. So this was a lot of fun, a lot of good action. I think folks are going to find this a real thrill to read while they're waiting for the next Gray Man. And I think this can take on a life of its own. So
I agree. I mean, we knew he could do something other than Gray Man because of his Clancy stuff and because of Red Metal, but this is kind of cool because it's a wholly original story that he came up with by himself, and he showed that he, the magic's there no matter what he does.
That's right. So Chris is on vacation, enjoying himself without us. How dare he? And till next time, we'll see you in the Crew Reviews.